Hey guys, thanks for joining me again. Today I'm going to teach you one of my all-time favourite solos, Charlie Christian's beautiful solo from Rose Room. For me, this is a non-negotiable must-learn solo for anybody with even the faintest whiff of an interest in jazz playing, swing playing, or just playing over changes in general. There's so much we can learn from the way Charlie effortlessly bobbed and weaved through these chord progressions, and he always did it with such conviction. I mean, just listen to the strength of his picking attack. I mean, that's a man who knew what he wanted. So we have some big boots to fill here, but we'll do our very best, and I'm going to talk you through the thinking and the shapes used behind each and every lick. So let's go. Of course, the lesson materials for this are going to include my transcription of his solo in tab and notation, PDF and Guitar Pro formats, but I'll also include a transcription of my chord part and a backing track. And I'd recommend having that printed out in front of you so we can analyse each phrase against the chord to make sense of where the notes are coming from. If you want to get hold of that stuff and all of my lessons, you can join my Patreon page for just $10 a month, or if you just want this as a one-off purchase, head over to the Gumroad link. Okay, so this is in the key of A flat, and the first chord we play over is a 2 dominant, or 5 of 5 we can call it. This is a B flat 7, and the phrase he plays is this. So a simple phrase, we can say all of that belongs to the B flat Mixolydian scale. But I personally think that Charlie was probably more thinking about just the chord shape of a B flat 7 and the notes that he knows complement and decorate it well, like the 6th or the 13th and the 9th. I'm going to do a full video on Charlie's most commonly used shapes for playing lead, but just as a quick sort of teaser for that, this would be one of the shapes, as would this. And it's kind of a combination of both. Now this note lands on the change to the 5 chord, the E flat 7. This is why we could call the B flat 7 the 5 of 5, because it's the 5 of E flat, and the E flat is our 5 because we're in the key of A flat. Hope that makes sense. Now this is the phrase we play on the E flat 7. Starts very simple, just the 6th and the 5th. 13th again. Remember, the 6th is called a 13th when we're playing it on a dominant chord. So the 13 and the 5th, and then we go 4 minor. So D flat minor, just a simple D flat minor triad. This is being played over the E flat 7, which kind of gives us a E flat 7 with a flat 9 kind of sound. Now, if you've seen my plagal cadence video, or a few of my other videos actually where I talk about the 4 minor, it's one of those sounds that is a interchangeable thing with the 5 chord in a lot of cases, especially in this era of swing music. You know, players like Django used to think of them as totally interchangeable. The rhythm player might be thinking 5 to 1, but Django will often outline 4 minor to 1. And Charlie's doing the same thing here. So think of it as cadence playing. As long as you're playing something that sets the 1 up, it's kind of up to you which cadence you use. The perfect cadence, the 5-1, or the plagal cadence, the 4 minor 1. Charlie goes for both, a bit of 5-1 and then 4 minor, and then to the 1, very typical, almost rockabilly kind of enclosure around an A flat major chord. And then we make that 1 chord a dominant, making it the 5 of 4 now. So we're thinking A flat 7, and this is one of those shapes that we'll talk about in a future lesson. Again, it looks like a minor triad, right? You can see this E flat minor portion of this shape, but we're thinking of it in relation to A flat 7, so really you're starting on the 9. A flat 9 kind of tonality. There's the flat 7 and the 5th, the major 3rd, and then walking down chromatically from the 2 or the 9 to the root. And then basically visualizing this little chord shape and just raking through with a triplet feel. Resolving to the D flat chord by hitting its root. So now we're on the 4 chord, D flat major. In the chord part I played a D flat major 6th. That then switches to a D flat minor 6th, so there's that plagal cadence again, the 4 minor. So over that 4 minor we play. Again, you can really see this D flat minor triad, can't you, on the top 3 strings. Starting on the 6th. That, by the way, is very common. If you're thinking 4 minor, you can almost assume that there's be a 6th in there somewhere. pretty sound. So with that said, running down from the 6th, chromatically there to the 5th, coming down the triad, there's the 6th again, so you can visualize this as kind of a 1 octave D flat minor 6 shape. And then he goes to the D string, walking down all the way to that minor 3rd again, and then connecting to the 5th of the A flat chord that's now appeared. Now we're back on the 1. And then that goes down to 6 dominant, or 5 of 2, so this is F7. And he plays probably the most killer lick in the whole thing, and a notoriously hard one to actually execute. So over that F7, he's playing a 3 to 9 arpeggio. So the 3rd, the 5th, the flat 7, the 9, and then going one step further and putting the 13 on top. This is something I speak about at length in another Charlie Christian video of mine. I think it was the Found a New Baby solo. So I'm going to link to that in the description if you want to know more about these arpeggios. And then he's just sort of dancing around up and down the strings using similar things, you know, notes that complement an F7 chord. 9, 3rd, flat 7 and root. And then the chord changes to B flat 7 and he plays this shape, which is the one we've already used twice in this solo so far. We used it over A flat 7 a moment ago. We also used it as a D flat minor sound. There's a lot of repetition of shapes here, 2 times used for a dominant sound and 1 time used as a minor. Just shows how he understood the multifaceted way these notes work. So again, that's that shape where you can see a minor triad there, in this case an F minor triad. But remember, we're actually playing it on a B flat 7 chord, so you can think of this as a shape that starts on the 9th and then walks down chromatically to the root. So when we connect those together over the changes and we play them in a triplet timing, we get this. 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a 1 and a 2 and a 3, 4, F7, B flat 7. Now I'm alternate picking throughout, and you'll notice I'm using rest strokes throughout to get that strong pick attack. I'd recommend that if you really want the authentic Charlie Christian sound. I'd also recommend using a heavy pick. This is a 2mm Blue Chips pick that's nice and sturdy. No bend in it whatsoever. And you'll also want to free float the wrist and make sure that when you strike the strings, you're really doing that rest stroke thing and landing through the string, balancing on the one underneath. Now, if you've seen my channel before, you'll probably know that I play with a bit of a mixture of styles in my picking. For some passages, I do a bit of a gypsy picking kind of thing, where I'm starting on a downstroke on any new string. For years, I played gypsy jazz and got really into the habit of that, and I like the tone of it, but I struggle with doing it at high speeds. I never mastered that really. So for higher speed things, I'll use kind of a mixture. On strong notes, on strong beats, I'll use rest strokes, and then the rest of the time I like to use alternate picking. So kind of a mixture of styles. Let me show you what I mean, close-up time. So here's my way of playing. Mostly alternate picked, using rest strokes where I want the note to really pop. The gypsy picking approach with that hard and fast rule of hitting every new string with a downstroke would be this. You can see how that changes the flow of the picking. Makes the notes sound a lot stronger though. I'll let you decide what you want to go with. Okay, enough waffle. Next phrase, E flat 7. We play this. Again, very similar to that group of notes we used over the F7 a moment ago. Thinking of things like the 3 to 9 arpeggio. It's always going to sound really good in this style. But Charlie also liked these simple little rectangular shapes. Very symmetrical, but all notes that complement well on an E flat 7. 13 and 5th, 3rd and 9, root and flat 7. The phrase here involves a little bit of pattern playing. And you want to learn to roll the fingers to do that, rather than switching fingers around too much. Now we start the second A section, we're back over that B flat 7, and he plays this. Which again is looking at the chord shape. If you're thinking of this common B flat 7 chord, you just take the middle portion of it and arpeggiate it, and then climb up the B string grabbing more notes that complement the B flat 7. Again, you could think Mixolydian if you like, but that might be a little too fancy, when all we really need to think of is notes that work well on the chord, the 13 and the flat 7, and then chromatically walking down to target that flat 7 of the new chord, E flat 7. And again, that plagal cadence thing, he's thinking of E flat 7, but also knows that he can bring in a bit of D minor flavour to get back to the 1. I mean, you can hear how effective that is as a chord progression, right? Even if the rhythm player was just doing this, 5 to the 1, as the lead player you can play 4 minor. It's always going to really lead you to the resolving chord in a really pretty way. And speaking of the resolving chord, A flat major or major 6th, we play this. Again, very simple. He likes to use the simple stuff on the 1 chord and builds up the more complicated ideas on the 5 and the like. So this is like an A flat major chord voicing, hammer on from minor to major 3rd, bluesy style, and just up through the remaining notes in the chord. Now here comes the A flat 7 again, so we're making that 1 chord become a secondary dominant, leading us to the 4. So we call this the 5 of 4, because the 4 is D flat, and that's where this wants to resolve to. Over this A flat 7, again like before, we're thinking of this triad. Again, it looks like an E flat minor triad, but we're thinking of it as being notes that work well on an A flat dominant, the 9, the flat 7 and the 5th. And he does this playful little thing, bringing in the major 3rd as well. And then resolves it, again chromatically. He likes to do that, doesn't he? Chromatic lines resolving to strong notes of your chords. So this time resolving to the root of D flat. And then staying on the D flat. Quite a Django sounding thing to me, that. So this is all from a D flat major pentatonic scale, or you can be thinking of chord tones, major 7, 6th, back to your basic triad, and there's the 6th again. And then 4 minor, D flat minor 6 comes along and he plays this. Focuses in on that 6th and then does one of these rockabilly kind of things. You know, you hear that all the time in Charlie Christian's playing. Definitely like the first rockabilly player in my opinion. Now he's back to the A flat major, but he's thinking A flat 7 to bring in that bluesy vibe. Then he does this really clever little thing. He connects it straight to the F7, and there's an interesting timing thing to speak about in there. So first of all of that is A flat 7. You can see quite clearly root, flat 7, 13, bluesy little hammer onto the major 3rd, and then up the triad, but then to the F7. Again, that shape we've used now repeatedly, thinking of the shape that would begin on the 9th. Looks a lot like a C minor triad as well, easy way to find it. And if you really want to get the details, the little nuances that make this stuff really shine, then you want to pay attention to the little skip that he puts into the timing. I think it's really beautiful. So you can really hear where it sits on the beat. Here it is with a metronome on beats 2 and 4 at 115 BPM. I think that's a really important little detail. Makes it sound extra pretty. Now we're almost done. Now we're hitting the B flat 7 and he plays this. Again, a simple little shape, similar to that rectangular symmetrical thing we spoke about. If you imagine B flat 7 here at the 1st fret, and we're just taking the B string and G string, the 3rd and the root, the 9 and the flat 7. You could also play that on the next string set, but I feel like he's playing it here. Because if you imagine we've just gone, it flows a lot better that way. And then back to the A flat, sorry, no, not the A flat, to the E flat. Kind of forgetting about the E flat there altogether, like I just did. You know, he's thinking about just playing a phrase that sounds like a natural kind of sign-off ending phrase. Really, it's more built around notes that would work well on an A flat 7. So, really killer solo. I'm going to play through it now at a slower tempo to the original performance, maybe at 115 BPM again. I think that was quite a good little practice speed. So let's try that. And this is what you should do as well, by the way. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. And just so that we've got a complete view of the chord changes, I'm just going to rattle through the changes using mostly 3-note voicings at the full speed of about 145 BPM. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. And of course, I'd highly recommend learning the chord changes. It's just going to be as important as the solo, so make sure not to be lazy about that. Okay, and there we go. I hope you can hear why I love this solo so much. I just think it's supremely melodic, tasteful, playful, and emotive. It's so beautifully crafted. And this was a guy that was so young at the time, a real innovator of the guitar. There's certain lines in here that sound more like Lester Young's sax playing than a guitar player. Just really magnificent stuff. And I'd highly recommend digging deep into some Charlie Christian back catalogue if you haven't already. Now, as far as tone talk goes, just going to be a very simple one today. This is my 1953 ES125 with the original P90 pickup. I got the volume all the way up and the tone about halfway back. I'm running into a Vox AC15 today. There we go. Wouldn't normally be my first choice for this sort of thing, but it's the one that was set up and ready to go. So it's the one we used. Now, to get this sound that one step more authentic, if we think about the way it was recorded, the technology they had back in the day, and you can hear it for yourself on the recordings, that the guitar doesn't really feature much bass or much treble. It's not very hi-fi sound, it's quite mid-rangey and narrow. So what I do to kind of emulate that a little bit is I either use an EQ pedal and drop the bass and treble bands just a little bit, or in the case of today, and what I like to do a lot of the time, especially with Fender amps, is to use a clon type of pedal. Because with the clon, as you turn the gain up, you're boosting the mids, so you end up with this little peak at like 1K, 700 Hertz to 1K, somewhere like that. And it really helps you to get that slightly more honky sound that's a bit more authentic to this era. So I have a pedal called the Decibelix Golden Horse, which is a really good replica of the clon, and I have the gain set at about a quarter of the way up, same with the volume, and the tone's just smack bang in the middle. The strings on this guitar are Tomastic 12 gauge flat wound. And they do have that tone, very nice and warm and big sounding. Yeah, beautiful fat sounding strings, love them. So I guess that's about all we need to talk about today. I'm going to leave you to go and practice this stuff and do some good Charlie Christian listening. And I'll see you next time for something completely different. Oh, and please do remember to like and subscribe and share this video. It helps massively. All right, thanks guys. Take care.